Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me and hearing about our latest bit of news from Caspin. Um, a very significant milestone for the company. Maiden resource estimate for Kelpie Deposit. It's probably come as a bit of a surprise to a lot of people. It's not something that we advertised that we were doing. So it's a great bit of news, and it's definitely sets the company on a pathway to demonstrating a viable tin project. So just as a refresher, the Bygoo tin project surrounds the town of Ardlethan, sort of central New South Wales, part of the Wagga tin belt, so a very large province of historic tin mining going back to the turn of the century. Um, Quite prolific. Also, bits and pieces of gold mining in the area as well. We've been operating this project now for just under 12 months. It's been a hell of a ride so far. We've taken it, we've been running with it as quickly as we can. And like I said, this maiden resource estimate is definitely a significant milestone for the company. So there it is. That's kind of what it looks like in a 3D view. 3.94 million tonnes at 0.5% tin for just under 20,000 tonnes of contained. Um, this started off as an exploration target exercise. We've used some resource consultants, Cube Consulting here in Perth, to assist with this process. And during that exploration targeting exercise, we quickly realised that there was sufficient information here and good sort of geological understanding to actually define a maiden inferred resource. And that's what we've done. It's based on over 20,000 metres of drilling. Most of that is legacy data. Our team has done a great job in compiling the data from most recent exploration, plus work going back to the 80s, consolidated that with our own drilling that we've completed earlier this year, about 2,000 metres, and we've been able to bring that together into this geological model and resource model. Um, so you can kind of see it's in three parts, which is pretty much constrained around where the drilling is. So the resource very much constrained to the limits of drilling. Pretty much all the mineralisation that was in those drill holes is in the resource, which provides plenty of opportunity for growth, and that's something we'll talk about in the coming slides. 0.5% tin grade, very good in an open pit scenario. Extremely economic. And I think that's one of the three things that investors should take note from this resource announcement. And that is this resource is constrained within an optimized shell. So in layman's terms, we've wrapped some basic economic parameters around a mining scenario of this resource and constrained it within that optimized shell. So it's not in terms of in JORC terms that demonstrates reasonable prospects for eventual economic extraction, and so, not so much eventual, I think, rather sooner rather than later. So it's a very robust inferred resource, and what you see on that figure on the left, you can see the resource block models, those optimized shells. We've got the drill holes on there as well. The pink shaded wireframe is the exploration target that we released at the same time, and we'll get to that in a second. And that has basically been put together by modelling of the geology. Our team has done a great work in mapping on the ground and through interpretation of those drill holes. The granite contact that hosts the bulk of this mineralisation, and that's represented in that light pink wireframe you can see there. And as the arrow points out, it's quite large, over 1,000 metres. There's some sections taken straight from our consultants, plan on the left and a couple of sections. You can see the section A, very good continuity of mineralisation. That's through the central area. That was where most of the historical mining occurred, the Dumbrells Historical Mining Centre. and section B around in an area that we've previously called Stewart's. It looks a bit like a blob of mineralisation at the moment, but that's because there's not as much drilling in this area. And I think once we do further infill drilling, I think you'll find that it looks, it's something similar to what you see in the other section, uh, mineralisation dipping moderately off to the north. So as I mentioned, the resource is part of a much larger exploration target, 12 to 20 million tonnes at a similar sort of grade to the Kelpie deposit, which sort of demonstrates the potential to grow this resource two, three, maybe even four times. And that's essentially because there's a lot of room for additional drilling between the resource loads. There is still some gaps that, like I said before, it's only constrained by drilling. So drilling the gaps, we believe, where that granite contact continues, is more or less a surefire way to add some mineralisation into this resource. And then, of course, along strike to the north and south, sorry, more sort of west, northwest and south, the exploration target we've extended about 250 metres, completely open, and so ready for drilling to test that contact. It is still open at depth, and we've modelled that down to 250 metres. The optimised shells go down 190 at the current juncture, but it's still economic. So at what point does it not become economic at depth? Well, we don't know. And so we can continue to drill down dip as well. But let me assure you that the main focus is staying within those open pit constraints. Now, this exploration target doesn't consider the potential for repetitions of Gryson mineralisation at those contacts. The mineralisation sits very much at the contact of the granite with the hanging wall volcanics, but the drilling to test that mineralisation in the most part is just sort of arbitrarily stopped at set depths. And what we have found in some of that drilling is that there is potential for other repetitions or stacking of loads beneath the current drilling. So that's something else that we're aware of. But the other thing to consider, and this sits outside the exploration target, is that the Kelpie deposit is potentially part of a much larger mineralised system. And we see lots of evidence for this on the ground. The figure on the right has just shows some of the mapping that the guys have done. Hundreds of historical workings scattered through the area where there is outcrop. And we've been able to crawl all over these and take samples from nearby. And as you can see, some of the numbers there, plenty of mineralisation at surface. And so that's extending into the granite over 2,000 metres, and that mineralisation is potentially controlled by cross structures running in a sort of a southwest northeast direction, or could be examples of the stacking of loads that we see at Kelpie over on a much bigger scale. No drilling there whatsoever. So that's an obvious opportunity for us to extend mineralisation or find new deposits. And also along strike to the north and south, particularly to the north, the granite contact goes under some very shallow cover, sort of 1 to 2 metres. But that was definitely an obstacle for historical mining. There are a few historical workings and whatnot to the north, and we do see pathfinder anomalism in an area that's labelled Area 1 on that figure. And that sits in hanging wall rocks, which is kind of interesting. And what we think that might be indicating is leakage from a mineralised body at that granite contact underneath that, leakage through the hanging wall to the surface. So that represents another target as well. And as I said before, there's absolutely no drilling or very little drilling for thousands of metres to the south. So very much an open contact there ready to be explored as well. So this could be a part of something much, much bigger. So that's the second sort of takeaway. And I guess the third takeaway is that, and just stepping out in scale again, Kelpie and the surrounds are just a very small fraction of the total project area. This is really is a tin province. Um, Kelpie itself is about 5% of the total prospective strike on the eastern margin of the Ardlethan granite, most of which has not had any modern exploration whatsoever. That's despite the fact that the Ardlethan mine, about 7 kilometres to the south of Kelpie, operated through to the 80s. No modern exploration there at all. Last lot of drilling was in the 80s. So a very prospective contact area waiting to be explored. How do we do that? Well, we've just completed an aeromagnetic survey. We've talked about this recently. That will assist with targeting along this prospective contact. We've only got the data back recently, and our team is quickly working through it, redefining models and targets. We think it's going to be a very handy tool for further exploration, particularly at places like Ardlethan East, which we'll talk about in a second. So there's really quite a few sort of work streams coming up. We're obviously quite keen to test the extensions of the resource. Like I said, it's open in many directions and internally. And so that can be tested with a relatively small amount of drilling, testing those open pit scenarios. But we've also got some metallurgical test work that's still running as well. That's kind of in two parts. Gravity separation test work being run at a lab in Tasmania. This is just a test for conventional gravity separation of cassiterite, as well as we're doing a very high level ore sorting test. Further mapping and sampling in that broader Bygoo area, which should lead to some reconnaissance style testing beyond Kelpie, particularly that Area 1 target looks really interesting, but also continuing to evaluate the entire project area. And we're doing quite a lot of work on Ardlethan East. I've got a slide on that. This is actually an old slide. I guess there's an old adage that the best place to find more ore is in the shadow of the head frame, and that's kind of the principle here. We think that there's good prospects for repeats of the host intrusion that was part of the Ardlethan mine undercover to the east in our tenure. And why do we have that confidence? Well, through there is basically sedimentary and volcanic rocks. There should not be sort of any surface expression of tin through that area at all, yet there is. A lot of historical work has shown that there is mineralization either outcropping or in some of the historical drilling. So that's really encouraging. The image on the right is the old mag survey. As you can see, it's very coarse. We can't wait to get into the new data that we've just acquired. We think that will assist with some of our targeting. So Ardlethan East is another target that we're working up alongside the Kelpie deposit at the same time. And look, we've talked about metallurgy. I can't wait to share those results. We're very confident in being able to produce a saleable tin concentrate, but this will give us the confidence or be able to quantify recoveries, grades, and that will assist in talking about how to market a concentrate. So that news will be coming up in the coming weeks. And so, look, I think the really important part of, the important part of this milestone is that it gives us, or gives our investors, a more direct way to compare us to our peers. I've talked about this a lot in the past. There's only a handful of companies with primary tin projects on the ASX. I've listed their projects here. they're broadly separated into underground projects, which, well, they're underground projects and open pit projects, and they're also geographically separated as well. It happens to be that all those underground projects in Tasmania and the open pit projects are in New South Wales. Kelpie, whilst obviously the smallest of those at the current juncture, I think I've demonstrated there's plenty of room for it to grow, but significantly has a higher grade in an open pit scenario than some of our peers. So I think that gives us a really good launching pad for demonstrating a viable tin project. And I think we've got a very clear path now to grow that resource into something that could be very significant, not only for Australia but on a world scale as well. So that's just a quick corporate snapshot. Not much change in our shareholding. Completed a cap raise a few months ago. That gives us the firepower to conduct our immediate drill programs. So we're in a really good position, and obviously really excited by where this announcement now places us. So Evie, I think that's probably enough for me. I've kept it reasonably short and sweet. Happy to take some questions.
I've got lots of questions. I've got one that's been emailed through to me while you were presenting just now. Looking at the exploration target, 12 to 20 million tonnes, are there any land access hurdles or potential impediments that could be a barrier to the company achieving these aims in the future?
Good question. So all that exploration target is within our current land access agreements. So in short answer, no, but it's good that people recognise that, we are, as that photo sort of indicates, we are operating in agricultural land, and land access is a really important part of our business. I guess the way we approach this is that we seek land access agreements as our exploration targets dictate. And so as we develop new targets, we will seek to add land access agreements to enable us to do that exploration. But our immediate targets around Kelpie and Ardlethan and East, for that matter, are covered by existing land access agreements.
Okay. So, just moving on, the same person's asking the question. Will this target require a partner to fund large-scale exploration and resource definition? And if so, what are some of the mid-tiers or major companies investing in tin? Have you spoken to anyone?
Well, look, I guess let me answer the question a little bit differently. One of the things I really like about this tin project, or particularly open pit tin projects, is that the barriers to development are actually quite small. So I've stressed that we're talking about an open pit scenario. So all our drilling, essentially testing the extensions to that Kelpie deposit, are kind of less than 200 meters. So probably, the next steps in terms of drilling would probably, it would be staged, probably 2,500 meters as a sort of an intermediate step, and then probably another 2,500 meters after that. So 5,000 meters. So let's call it 25 drill holes. You can actually get quite a lot of bang for your buck. And so that's really manageable for a small company like ourselves. And look, if we have success, the other thing to recognise about tin projects is that and this is really a conversation for when we get our MET results, but gravity separation is reasonably easy by metallurgical standards. There's not a lot of chemical separation involved. You basically need water and that's about it. So generally those plants are relatively low capex. Having said that, we are always open to partnering with strategic investors, whatever is in the best interest of our shareholders.
Of course. So I might just move to these ones before I get to the online questions, because and Richard, if you're still there, can you just elaborate on your two questions that you've sent through the panel, please? Because I'm not sure what you're asking. So just moving on to this one is what is the likely duration before the mine is finalised to commence operation
Oh, well, look,
when
let's
we get to that
yeah,
stage,
let's
obviously.
be clear. We've got a resource here, but we don't have a mine. A lot of work to go under the bridge before now and then. There's obviously feasibility studies and whatnot, but you can't do a feasibility study on until you know how big your deposit is. And I guess that is something that I've kind of really tried to stress in this presentation is that we think that Kelpie deposit is quite substantial in its own right. 20,000 contained tons of tin is reasonably significant. However, I think it could be much bigger than that. My personal feeling, I'd be disappointed if we can't double it, right? And so when we get to that point, then we'll go through the studies and work out, let's build a mine. So um, it's more of an exploration and growth story at the moment, but at least there's a pathway. I think there's a clear pathway to a development.
And speaking of exploration, have you picked up any new exploration acreage on trend adjacent to this potential tier one discovery? No exclamation mark, no sense in discoveries for others, a new play or a new play for others.
Yeah, look, the answer is no, and that's really because I think we've got the best tin project in the belt,
Mm.
uh, pretty simply. And we haven't really explored most of it. So I think we've really got to look what's in our own backyard. I do recognise that there are other tin occurrences in the belt, and we're also keeping our mind open about gold opportunities as well. There are gold occurrences in the belt as well. So look, never say never, but in terms of tin, I think we've got the best part of the belt already.
Okay. Does the company have any immediate intentions to drill immediately to the south and along the borders of the Ardlethan mine? If so, what size of the drill program can be expected?
Um, I think I've answered that in the
Presentation.
presentation. The answer is we are very much interested on the border of what could be extend from the Ardlethan mine into our project area. There's plenty of evidence on the surface to suggest that there's uh, repetitions of that ore body lurking under reasonably shallow transporter cover and stratigraphic cover. So yeah, that's definitely on our radar, and that's something we want to test at the earliest opportunity.
Okay, and what size and grade do you think will be optimal when considering a mine plan? I think you've covered that one too.
Well, look, you can only look at what your peers are doing. I think that 0.5% open pit is really economic. So I think if we can try and build our resource around that sort of number, um, I think that'll be quite significant. If you want to go underground, it's probably a number closer to 1% or thereabouts. So um, I think we're in the ballpark.
Are the tenements located on mining leases or exploration leases?
Exploration licenses for the time being, yeah.
I've got a question from Graham. I'm going to allow Graham Cartwright to ask a question live. Is that okay?
No,
Okay, Graham, can you unmute yourself?
oh, I said
Okay.
no.
Yeah, there you are.
Okay, I'm good.
That's good. Nice to have you here.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I missed the first part of the presentation,
Okay,
Greg.
we've
The
recorded it.
oh, excellent. I was guess and sort of elaborating on what you said about the complexity. I think the initial um, result that you put out showed or a thin slice showed a cassiterite up to 1 millimeter in size, and I think you talked in that release about 50 to 200 microns. Have you sort of got any um, comparison of what of those two numbers? Is it sort of somewhere between 200 and 1,000 microns that we're talking about?
I I think we obviously will have a better idea about that once our metallurgical test work is
Right.
complete. But the fact that our geos can pan that and which is what in the picture on the right,
Yeah.
that's reasonably coarse. So
Right.
I think we're at the coarser end of that range.
Okay. So you think in that 50 to 200, you're thinking more towards the 200, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
mostly gravity only and stay well away from flotation to make your plant a
I
lot
don't think
simpler.
there's. Yeah, so we're starting with the easy in terms of the Met program. We start with the easiest things,
Yeah.
gravity separation first, and that's um, that our samples look amenable to that.
And excuse my ignorance. Did you say when the Met you got to start seeing some of the Met stuff come back?
Well, in an ideal world, it's later this month.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Graham. Okay, I think that's it. We're done.
Excellent. Well, look, thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. I think it's a really exciting time for the company, and I hope you think so too.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a good day.
Thanks, Evie.